Hi, I'm Lawrence Saxon. I'm a DNC member from California. The Republicans have made a strategy out of making sure that elected officials pick who gets to vote. They do that through gerrymandering, they do that through voter suppression, they do that through creating all sorts of obstacles to casting a vote and registering to vote. We, I don't think, have done a very good job of explaining that a democratic value is that voters should select our elected officials, not elected officials should select our voters. We also haven't done a very good job of making that part of our message, part of our fundraising priorities, part of what we do every day in and out in terms of our party. So I'm going to ask each of you, first of all, do you agree that this needs to be one of our articulated values? And second of all, how would you help effectuate that? Thank you.
To your last piece, it absolutely needs to be part of our messaging. I think the fact that in 6 days you'll have Trump as president is a perfect way for us to fundraise off of the nonsense that he will consistently be doing, and for us to be very clear in pushing back against the things that he says. The absolutely unacceptable commentary he had against John Lewis is another reminder that we have to constantly step up and speak out as Democrats and say very clearly that we have to have fairer lines, we have to have better engagement, and we have to be much more clear about the message we're communicating as Democrats.
Thank you for the question. I think it's incredibly important that we improve and streamline the process as to which DNC supports the state parties, the state chairs, and a lot of the local state redistricting efforts, much of which is done through the state legislatures. We want to make sure, and I've heard in too many of my phone calls with so many of you from across the country that local candidates running for office don't have the infrastructure or the support, and it's really hurting turnout from the bottom up. And so it's important, even as we improve the transparency of how the DNC fundraises. For example, I've had donors and potential donors tell me that if we could tell them and explain to them how their money is being used and how the donations are being used, possibly to support state parties, for example, that a lot of them would be a lot more invested and that our party would be a lot stronger because of that. I think that it's important. We also, I'm part of a national task force that reaches out. It's the Outreach and Engagement Task Force, and what we've done is go around parts of the country and talk to local nonprofit and grassroots organizations and to local state elected officials to explain to them how the voter rights laws need to be passed and improved so that literally, for example, in New York, thousands of voters were purged from our system as pretty much a direct result of the need to improve voter rights laws. So this is a lot of what we need to work on.
I would have to say right now I disagree. I think we can't make the same mistakes where we say, oh, they're a Democrat, you need to vote for them, because my generation won't do that. We need better candidates. I think the reason we voted for Barack Obama is we absolutely loved him and we were passionate about him. We can't keep saying they're Democrat, go vote down the ticket, because we're not going to do that. We're just not going to turn out. We need to train better candidates. I'm going to vote for this young woman who's running for city council over in San Diego because I want to be connected to those candidates. I don't want to be told they're a Democrat and told what to do because I'm a woman. I want to do it because I believe in them. So we need to train candidates, we need to have a better pipeline of recruitment, and we need to open up the process. Because I know women who want to run for office and feel like they're cut out because they're not part of the Democratic establishment, or they haven't been the chief of staff for 20 years to the other candidates, so they're not given the position. We can't do that anymore. We have to open it up. So no, right now, I would not say vote Democrat on the ticket, but I want to make Democrats back up because we're awesome, and then we can.
But we need not only DNC members regionally to be involved, but we need to bring the party committees within the legal limits of the fundraising and have a real conversation about where this money is being invested. Because at the end of the day, we invest so much money at the top of the ticket, and we want to talk about bringing candidates out, getting them involved, and helping them. But if we actually invested at the local level and we were competing everywhere, it's naturally going to help the top of the ticket. And that's when we get into state party partnerships, expanding that, but other ways that we can bring that money in. And it's very important that we look at where this money is being spent. I think we waste a tremendous amount of money on TV.
First of all, I want to say this is the first time I felt optimistic since Election Day at some point, so thank you. I'm very optimistic because of the incredible panels we've had already, your panel. So my question is, will you commit to continue dialogue at these meetings. I don't want to be talked to. I want to engage in this way, listen, dialogue, as well as working groups. Like, sign us up. Some of us know more about fields. Some of us know about. That's what we need to do at these meetings, and we'll come to more than a couple. So it's that general engagement. That's my first question. The second one is, will you
You're killing
each...
me.
No.
You're killing me
These are
here.
yes, no. These are yes, no. So my other one is, will you... There's only one that's going to win. The others need to remain engaged. How will you do that? Oh, 3. I'm sorry. Oh, nice. Oh, see, I'm getting educated from the... We're getting open.
Okay, so we get it.
So will you
rest of-
keep each other engaged
All right.
and help with the chairs candidates who do
Got
not?
it. Got it. Okay. Go ahead, ma'am. You're next. Real quickly.
Hi, I stood up when you were talking about acting locally, and I want you to please think globally. And so on behalf of the millions of Americans overseas and how many might be watching you streaming right now, I'm the chair of Democrats Abroad, and I want to know what you would do on the executive committee to help us find more of the millions of Americans overseas who are not voting, but when they vote, they're going to vote Democratic, and how are we going to bring their votes home? Thank you.
We actually changed some things in Georgia. We didn't get what we wanted to be, but we got involved. So what we did was we took it outside of just a legislation issue. We made it an issue for the community. We told the community, this is why it's going to matter. It's going to matter if you have all black people in one district, your voice is not going to count. All Latino districts, we told them why it counted, and they got involved. So now, even in Georgia, 10 years later, we're still doing that campaign. We're still making sure people know what's happening with the redistricting. We took it down from legislation and put it down on the micro level, and they understood what's happening. They're still involved now.
Hi there, thanks so much for running. I know this isn't easy. And when we talk about the Democratic Party and who's doing the work, a lot of times it's those folks in the Central Committee. I didn't know what a Central Committee was until Howard Dean ran and told us to get involved. It was a bunch of crazy people in my county, and I was like, oh wow, it is what it is. But we joined. And I know some of you guys are state party chairs and electeds. What have you done locally, not just the state party chairs, that clearly you had worked up the ranks to get to where you are, but there are a lot of people here running, not just for this seat, but other seats who we have no idea where they've been. You talk about voter engagement and involvement. The people that are going to actually do the work that is implemented by the DNC are at the Central Committee meetings on whatever day of the week it is, however many times a month. And if you don't understand the basic infrastructure of that, and the experience that goes with that, I think it's important. We talk about changing direction here and turning the tide of the Democratic Party, which I agree with, but unless you know the foundation and the blueprint, you can't just get rid of everybody. You can't throw all the bums out. Some of the bums are actually pretty good, and I want to know what you've done locally to understand that. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the question. All right.
I think that the DNC, I like the concept of a one-stop shop. I think that we have resources that need to be improved on. We have entities like our constituency desks, our councils, our caucuses, and we need to be more diverse in our senior staff, our consultants, the vendors that our party uses. I think locally, what we need to do also, and we saw this, whether it was through the Bernie campaign or the Hillary campaign, the engagement of so many new people to this democratic process, whether it's millennials, whether it's diverse and immigrant communities. We need to make sure, whichever state people are from, that they continue to be engaged. The last thing we want to do is to not engage with them until the next major election. We need to make sure that the engagement and the participation is year-round. The surrogate type processes that the campaigns use, that we continue to engage these communities. We need to make sure that we are giving resources, and locally what I've done is I have an organization that helps train candidates who want to run for office from communities of color, communities who are underrepresented. We help assist them with media training. We help give them tools as to what they can do and what they should do if they want to run for office. These are the tools that I felt was lacking when I first ran for local office a few years ago. And so whatever we can do locally to make sure that we are ensuring that there are Democratic candidates running at the bottom of the ballot and at local levels to make sure that our party has the resources to properly assist these diverse and new communities.
So yes, local is important. I've worked in central committees in Maryland and Montgomery County, and that was amazing. It was also kind of rough. I've worked with the ward leaders in Philadelphia, and that was amazing. That's just a whole world that nobody even knows about, and it's amazing. The problem is that those ward leaders stay there for 40 years. Now, you're right, they are good bums. There are phenomenal people in this, but I think we also have to understand it is not a welcoming place generally for younger people, right? I know a lot of people who've tried to get involved and leave one of the meetings and are like, never again. Now, we can't do that. We've got to actually pick it up and get involved and get engaged. But I think that means both ways, right? So one of the things we've all talked about after Trump, and I'm on this like Slack channel called the Arena Summit, which was one of the best experiences I've ever had, of 300 people getting together, artists, poets, politicians all engaging. And one of our commitments was to run for committee member, to run for ward leader, to actually be involved with our neighbors, right? Because we're always online, but we're not going through. So I totally agree we have to get involved. At the same time, I ask committee members and ward leaders, give us a chance. Maybe step down and train us, pass on the baton, because I think that's really important. Otherwise, it becomes a toxic environment, and we feel negative about Democrats. I think we have to be very honest about that. It's not always easy, right? So we have to do both ways, but you're right, we need to understand local, and I do understand local. I worked with most candidates that were running for not city council, but for superintendent. That is a rough race because nobody cares. And how are they ever going to give you money? So you've got to internalize how to engage with that. And I think at the same time, that means we have to embrace all technology and all competition. And when we talk about all Democratic vendors, some of those Democratic vendors are taking 35% on media buys. That's crazy. We shouldn't be charging $20,000, $40,000 for a poll. That's insane. There's new technology coming up. So I get the concept of like, we have to be democratic and progressive, but we also need to embrace everything out there or we lose.
I know that for me, I didn't feel welcome wanting to do stuff in the Democratic Party for a long time because one of my first experiences professionally, I was having dinner and I explained that I really hated the welfare reform bill. And people looked at me like, how dare you say that? And I'm like, I didn't know that was like a thing you're not supposed to say. I thought that's a good thing to say, that we want to have really good progressive policy. So I learned from that. And then I got involved locally in DC for a long time with Democracy for America. And now what I'm really hoping is that there is a resurgence of people wanting to be involved in the Democratic Party. And so at the local level, it's like, how do we make it, let's retool it so you don't have to, you can pop in, pop out, have it work, and then have onboarding for leadership.
Everything I think about is what the impact is on a local level. I represent 139,000 people in a 30-block radius where 21% of my residents live in public housing, where every single day we're trying to figure out how we help someone, where Khalif Browder, the young man who took his life because he was in solitary confinement for allegedly stealing a book bag, is the reason why we're pushing for raise the age, because North Carolina and New York are the two states in this country where still 16 and 17-year-olds are tried as adults. We are constantly thinking about what you have to do on the local level every single day as it relates to politically and electorally. Look at how Linda Kemp, a wonderful young sister who lives in public housing and in our community, we now have her as a vice chair. The increase that we've been able to amplify in terms of our county committee, making it more diverse across the board. Look at the staff that we've been able to put together locally. My co-chairs of my transition committee, both were women. My campaign manager, a woman. My legislative director is a woman. 2 openly gay individuals on our team, Latino, Native American, Asian, African American, all across the board. If we're going to be serious about this, we have to understand what's going on the ground and make those changes on the ground. Look at it from a policy perspective. We're the first state in the country for the My Brother's Keeper program, $20 million for boys and young men of color, now implemented and that's happening in our community. So all these different aspects are what are we doing on the ground and helping on the ground. So when we think about what we wish to do, the next step is to make sure that there's more training that's happening. I'm a national co-chair for an organization called New Leaders Council. 44 chapters, 4,100 alumni across the country, consistently mobilizing young people to get involved in the process on the ground, in being involved in city council and school board and state rep, and understanding that it's not just about being the elected official, but also the staff, and making sure staff are a part of it, and the everyday person that may work from 9 to 5 and have 1, 2, 3 kids and all the issues they have in their respective communities, but they still want to be involved in that way. So we've been consistent, we have been engaged, and we're making sure we're focusing on a local manner, because if we're not, we're going to lose out on these opportunities. People want to be involved right now. We have to understand that Trump is mobilizing many folks to understand we have to get engaged in the process. And now people just want to know, how do I become part of this process? Where do I go? How do I get plugged in? And what can I actually do to knock on doors, to make phone calls, and to be engaged and trained in that way? Last piece I'll say on this. A few days ago, I was on my way on a recent trip, And a father was telling me, you know what, my son has been involved in politics before, and he's wondering, why should I stay involved in the Democratic Party? We are the party that has stood up on all the respective issues as it relates to progressive values, and we make sure we have to communicate that. To make sure someone understands the local dynamics, communicate to them. The same way we're talking about Black Lives Matter, we need to have the same energy when it comes to the Dakota Access Pipeline. The same way we have the energy as it relates to Flint water, we need to have that energy for water across our communities. We have to understand that people are engaged and they get plugged in, and we educate and empower them, whether it be through executive committee, county committee, or local infrastructures. The Democratic Party, county, state, and national is the way they can get involved and mobilize from there.
All right.
Democrats abroad. My parents are Democrats abroad. They live in South Africa. They are huge Hillary supporters. They wanted to give money directly to Hillary and specifically to Field. It was almost impossible to do that because you couldn't directly donate. They had problems with their credit cards, and I had to speak to my mother every single day. Now that's great, right? It's great, but that was a lot. That was a lot, and I would love for the website to be improved. So when I'm talking to her, we're not saying, now, darling, use your credit card and go. That doesn't work. So what we need to do is get specific projects up there that Democrats abroad can give to so they feel invested. What candidates are they investing in? What are they doing in Arizona? They want to feel more connected than just the DNC.
Okay.
They want to know that. So
Good.
that's it. And it's Liz Jeff for vice chair. Thank you. .com.
Are you willing to come out and admit that the Democratic Party maybe became complacent?
I won't say that any party became complacent, because I think the reality is you had many wins that still happened. You look at Catherine in Nevada. Obviously, Kamala is our new senator in California. So we've clearly had wins. I think what we have to understand is there are many parts to the puzzle that you have to focus on. So when you lose 3 states by 80,000 votes, in a large part because of the lines that have been drawn and suppressive voter laws that have been put in place, it demonstrates that you have to have more focus all across the board, and that you have to make sure that your candidates at the local level, that they're not just trying to be tied to the top of the ticket, but giving people to be excited themselves. I'm being very clear. Someone has to be excited about what you're conveying, and you can't just say, well, vote against that other person. And so I think this is a moment. I think a lot of times you can look at crisis and challenge, but see it as opportunity. And so I wouldn't say that we've been complacent as a party. I do think there are lessons learned. And I think we have to be very clear about that. I think we need to understand that there are voters that might have come out for the first time for Senator Sanders, that we need to figure out how to make sure we keep them engaged in the process in the exact same way in 2008, that we have voters that voted for Senator Obama for the first time. Keep everyone engaged in the process and continue to keep you mobilized and excited and engaged. That's what we can do. Look, 218 counties voted for President Obama twice that voted for Donald Trump. So you can't say the individuals there are automatically racist or sexist and all that, but there's something that we have to see. Maybe it's an economic message, maybe it's just about the trust factors, but we have to hear that and then make the changes to actually amplify in that way, because there are more people who are voting for us. Secretary Clinton had close to 3 million people vote for her, more than Donald Trump. So we now have to just demonstrate, how do you keep people engaged and mobilize in this moment?
One of the questions I'm asking all the candidates, because it's the question that everyone told us to ask all the candidates, is, are you willing to take a stand against corporate lobbyists in the Democratic Party? Something that President Obama and Biden had, that was a ban that they had, and they raised more money than ever under their, and then in the past couple of months we got rid of it. And people seem to be very angry about that. Are you willing to take that stand?
I think we have to take a step back, first of all. If the question is, if you believe money automatically corrupts someone, because I think that's the core, deeper issue that's there, which I'm not convinced of that, just because of the dollars that comes in that automatically corrupts someone. Absolutely not. The reality is, President Obama is one of the most transformational presidents ever, so for someone to say to me, well, because of dollars that came in that corrupt someone, I'm not going to abide by that notion.
But he had the ban. For corporate
changes. However, let's also make it clear, there was changes that relate to the PACs themselves, right? So again, we're sometimes making semantics rather than the broader conversation of where there's still ways for people to be involved in the process. They still were involved in different ways. Secondly, we're almost automatically treating someone negatively because of the profession that they're in. That doesn't mean someone has done something wrong. That's just the profession they're in.
Should they be able, I understand that. I'm going to push back a little bit on this, because I think it's not so much the question of are lobbyists bad? It's the influence, the conflicts of interest in a court of law, in any other, I mean, you're an assemblyman, you have to disclose things like this because of
Well, you would disclose
conflicts of interest.
You disclose any donation. Again, the argument is automatically insinuating that a particular person is bad, because the reality is...
Well, the founders warned against this.
Oh, well, the founders warned against a lot of things. I mean, a lot of things we could have learned about Jim Crow, slavery, suffrage that we can talk about. So the reality is we can make decisions based upon partial facts itself. Does that corrupt someone? Absolutely not. The reality is, what do you do in that space? And how do you provide fair access to everyone across the board? The problem really emerges when someone feels that you're getting special treatment. The problem really emerges when they feel like someone is able to get access that you may not be getting access in that way. So then there's the concrete issue that we have to then assess. If you take those stances, then how are you going to generate the revenue for the programs you also want to do? And so I think there has to be that balance of that understanding before we're very clear on these pieces. When we're talking about the increase in state, partnership program funding in the states, when we're talking about surrogate program, with all these different efforts, all these resources, all these programs take resources. And so I think we have to take that step back and ask that question and not automatically assume that someone is negative or corrupt because of where the dollars came from them. It's about understanding the core of that person.
Final question. DNC members are the ones who are voting. A lot of these DNC members have been there for a long time. Some of them are newer. But the reality is it's a process where people stay there for a long time. Would you be in favor of quotas or term limits or both?
No, because I think you automatically can lose institutional memory. I think you can automatically create a scenario where someone determines that they have satisfied their element of diversity by achieving certain thresholds. At the end of the day, what we need to do is get more people a part of the process and have them be elected to DNC office, have them be selected as at-larges, have them be a part of the chair and the vice chair. That's what we have to do, and make sure, and that's why we're running. We're running because we want to be a part of the change. We want to be a part of this movement to say, how do you get people involved and get engaged?
Also, if I'm saying you should step down, it doesn't mean I don't think you're excellent, but it's time to step down. And I think that we as Democrats have to recognize that, because I cannot get another email saying, like, give $5 because the sky is falling. And I think Nancy Pelosi is fierce as hell. I think she's fierce. I think, though, she should have stepped down. Because she was, Tim was never going to beat her, right? She's phenomenal. She whips like a crazy person. But she should have stepped down and still whipped, but allowed new leadership to say, we hear you. Yeah. And that would hurt me, right? Because I think she's amazing, but we have to take responsibility. And I don't think people are taking responsibility. And I think that's a problem. And so I'm here saying a lot of stuff people don't want to hear. But here's the other thing. We're going to build it no matter what. It would be nice for the DNC to be part of it, and I really hope they are, but it's happening because we will not stop. There are groups outside there right now, and we are fighting. We're going to get involved in races. And if I don't win this, of course I'm going to be engaging with local Democratic politics. That's all I do all day, and I'm going to keep doing it.
So the budget thing, I do want to go back to that for a second because it's really interesting. We've raised more money than ever and lost a record number of. We've never had so few seats in the history of the modern Democratic Party. Yeah. We are you couldn't lose more. You literally could not lose more, and you could not raise more money. Yep. So, where's the disconnect?
Well, the disconnect is where the hell are they spending it? I can't tell you that, right, because I haven't seen the budget, but I can tell you a couple of things. If you're deploying staff that have been there forever, that might be a problem because they may not be your top quality. Now, not to say that some of them aren't, but I think it's hard to say that that might be it. The second thing I would say is that when you're having the infighting you're having, and I've just spent one day, like between the state parties and who's getting what, like I don't know how you get any shit done. And so for me, like for example, Kansas won a bunch of ledge races back. They did not do that with any support from state parties. They did that because a bunch of people came in and made it happen. We need more of that. We need more people who are hustling on the ground and getting it done. And so, yeah, we raised a ton of money, and where did it go? And so that's why I want the money to be seen. I want to know how much we're getting and how we're spending it, because then you can also say, why do we just give $40,000 to that consultant for a poll? And that is part of what I like about CrowdPack, right? I like the fact that it's transparent. I like the fact that you see what people are spending. Some people hate that. They're like, I don't want to show people what money I'm raising. But then what the hell are we doing? Yeah. We've got to change. We've got to say stuff that is a little bit more difficult to hear. And we've got to do things that are very kind of not really popular. I may not have anybody surrounding me for a drink tonight, so I'm very glad that we talked.
I will be drinking with her.
Yeah, thank you.
I know a few other folks here that will be drinking with you. I mean, this was my personal frustration in the campaign, and I'm sure a lot of our listeners saw me complaining about it all the time, was that the DNC became an institution, too big to fail. Consultants are failing up. There's no accountability in consulting. And then we get this bubble where the people inside the bubble think that Hillary Clinton's winning. The people outside the bubble are like, no, there's some problems here. And there's a disconnect. So it's almost like a rotating, revolving door. Would you institute any rules about revolving door, whether it's the members have, there's term limits, or consultants can only work a couple cycle. I don't know what they are because I'm not even there yet.
I think you have to do ratings, right? Ooh. So like what's very interesting is I work with a bunch of consultants.
The answer for everything.
I mean, this is the stuff, but it's also not just me. These are what people are working on right now, right? There's some incredible things happening. I think there have to be ratings, and I'll say why. There are two guys in Philadelphia that are working on something called the Jefferson Project. And I don't know if they're still working on it because you need money to do this. But they were like, look, there are a lot of good consultants that lose races, but that doesn't mean they're bad. They're excellent. They're just taking on those races because the winners don't want to do it. They're great consultants. So the rate should be, what was the point average win? How much did you spend? And then they should get rated on that. Then you can think of those amazing consultants who have 5 houses who are shit. And you can win by like maybe 2 points, but you just spent $2 million, right? I've been on.
Or it had nothing to do with them.
Nothing.
It could be like they had the mailer.
Exactly.
We're getting into the nuances here, but it's really important for those of you who want to run for office.
Absolutely.
Consultants will start coming to you and saying, oh, I'm a mailing consultant, and I won 17 races where they're all incumbents or they're all like highly funded.
Yeah, so that's part of the rating, right? If someone's an incumbent, they already get 2 points down because normally it's easier to win with an incumbent. There are rating systems that we can actually put in place that can do this, right? And I think that is super important. Once again, it's a market decision on that because the problem is also kickbacks, right? If you guys don't know about this, kickbacks happen. So when your friends tell you to use a consultant, double check that they're not getting money for that because that happens. I mean, it happens all the time. So like you have to look at that. The second thing is, what do you need? So for example, I'm going to make a pitch. There's a group called DEC, D-E-C-K. They're trying to replace all polling and targeting by letting you just do it yourself. And it's so cheap. And for me, it was awesome. And they're not taking investors because they don't want to have any of those kickbacks or anything else. And I love them. And I was like, great, I'm just getting them to meet everybody they can because you should never do a poll. Sorry.
Yeah, no.
But like you really shouldn't do a poll. There's very little reason for you to do a poll unless you're running for some massive federal level of office. That's bullshit. Don't do it. I think that there are ways we can start doing this and we can push out for consultants. In terms of a rotating door, it's hard, right? Because sometimes, like for example, Katie runs the Democrats Abroad, and she's awesome. And they left 5 million votes on the table. Let's not talk about that, right? That's a whole different story, and you should meet with Katie, and she's phenomenal. She's termed out. Someone like Katie, I would be like, no, you want her here because she knows people, she's fought, and she's got it. But at the same time, right, there are other people I'll be like, oh, you have to term them out. So I'm weird about term limits because I honestly don't know how I feel about them because some of that institutional knowledge you want. The other thing is I don't actually think we need to have anybody join the DNC. I just want the market open. I'm actually not telling you to join the DNC because I don't think you're going to want to do that.
Like as a member.
Yeah. I just don't think you're going to want to do that. I do think you should join your committee members. I do think you should become ward leaders because that is a sick position and it's awesome. Right? One of the biggest problems we're trying to solve with Run for Office is how can you make it easier, right? Like, what are the filing deadlines? What are you going through? Everyone's trying to do that right now, and instead of reinventing the wheel, let's scrape it up and go for it. Ballotpedia has been amazing in that, and we're going to become better at it. But what's going to happen after that is even when you have the information, why would you run, right? If I get nervous about running for office, and I, for some reason, have no inhibition, and I'm panicked every morning whenever I come, like, what the hell did I think I was doing? That's going to be so tough for people who should be running for it. And those are the people I want to run for it, right? Those community activists are like, I could never do it. I want those people. So we have to make it as easy as possible online, because they are going to be online. Let's just be clear. This is not a weird divide of socioeconomic breakdown. We want to make it simple. This is helping that. Then we have to say, what's our moral support? And we got to stop trolling, and we got to be supportive. And women have got to support women and get involved in it and support everybody, right? And you just have to be happy for your friends running. The nicest thing that happened to me today was all my friends sending messages saying, we love you, we're so glad you're crazy. Like, that was great. I love that because, this is a tough thing. It is a tough thing to do. And you put yourself out there and you're like, oh my God. But I think that's why, for me, I did one response, which I think really pissed a lot of people off, where they said, well, we should be talking about the Democratic ticket. And I said, no, because you can't tell our generation, oh, only vote for the Democrats. Because A, we're going to be pissed off that you think that that's just what we're going to do. And B, we want to know that people are engaged. I am a fierce Democrat, and there's hardly any chance I will ever vote for a Republican, because I'm assuming they don't have the same values I have. However, if I'm in a pro-choice state where they can't touch anything and there are issues that I care about, that's a different scenario. But what we need is better candidates. And I think that that is critical, and like those local candidates running for office. And one of the things I said, which was misconstrued, which is fine, but I said, I don't want to be told to vote somebody because they're a woman and I'm a woman. And that doesn't necessarily mean Hillary Clinton. I voted for Hillary Clinton because she was a phenomenal candidate, right? Not the best campaigner. I liked her policies, that's me, right? Other friends, in the general. But I think that what was important about that is I hated it when people were like, oh, you're going to vote for Hillary because you're a woman, right? It's the same thing with Barack Obama. Oh, you're African American, you're going to vote. We can't be told that. And you cannot at the same time say, oh, you're going to vote for them because you're Democrat. It clearly didn't work, and people didn't. And so what we need to recognize, they don't, so we have to change the messaging. I'm voting for them because they are young and engaged. I'm voting for them because their policies on these 3 issues I care about. Now, these ones suck, but I don't care about those because they can't implement it. We also have to be a little bit more leveraging to understand, like, they're not going to agree with everything we want, and that's okay, because we'll never get anything done. But I want to know my candidates before I vote for them. And that's why I work in voter information. And, like, municipal court judge, that is such an important election, so powerful, people never know about it. And how it gets elected in Pennsylvania, for example, is a joke. You basically pay $35,000 to get on the ballot, and that's the only way you win. So one of the things we try to do was like tell you the story. I mean, some of these people have been disbarred, and they were still running because they didn't have a job. So it's all across the country. People need to get engaged and wake up, and they need to be woke. And I think we know this, right? But it means that all of us need to be engaged, and that's why I'm running for DNC vice chair, and it's a little crazy, and I'm doing it because I also need to be aware of what's going on. I need to talk to these members to find out what they need because I want to help them regardless. I'm going to help them regardless of whether I get this position or not.